The water rose inside a pipe that had been welded shut for 41 years. At 2:17 a.m., gauge 13 went from 0 to 9 feet in less than 12 seconds. I was alone in the lower control room of Bayou Bienvenue pump station, watching rain turn the camera feeds white and trying to keep 3 ancient turbines from overheating. Gauge 13 served an abandoned intake beneath the east foundation. It existed on our diagrams only because removing it from the software would have required a city contract. I acknowledged the alarm. It returned. Then the speaker above my console said, in my brother's voice, "Elena, don't start pump 4. Mateo had drowned during Hurricane Isaac 14 years earlier. I killed the speaker and called my supervisor, Curtis Bell. Cellular service was down, but the station's microwave link still connected us to emergency operations. "Gauge failure," he said after I explained. "Condensation in the junction box. We need 4 online now." Our discharge canal was rising 6 inches an hour. Pumps 1 and 2 were carrying maximum load. 3 had tripped on bearing temperature. Without 4, 12,000 homes between the industrial canal and Chalmette would begin taking water before dawn. There's pressure in a sealed intake. There's a number on a bad screen. Start the pump. I had spent 9 years earning the authority to make that decision, partly because Mateo had died in a neighborhood everyone said should have evacuated sooner. I hated hesitation. I hated people who turned fear into procedure and called it prudence. I started pump 4. The building shuddered. A deep impact traveled beneath my boots, not like a turbine engaging, but like something enormous striking the foundation from below. Gauge 13 dropped to 7 feet. The discharge flow increased exactly as expected. Then every toilet and floor drain in the station began overflowing with blue water. It was clear, cold enough to smoke in the warm rooms, and far salter than the Gulf. I dipped a conductivity probe into it. 81,000 microsiemens, nearly twice seawater. Small gray flakes spun in the sample cup. Under the maintenance microscope, they resolved into fragments of paper covered in typewritten letters. One flake showed mate. I shut 4 down. The blue water stopped. Curtis called immediately. "Why did output fall?" I told him what I had found. There was a pause long enough for thunder to pass over the roof. "Go to the archive cabinet," he said. "Bottom drawer. Red binder." I had opened that cabinet 100 times. The bottom drawer always contained electrical permits. Now a red binder lay beneath them, secured with a numbered evidence seal. Inside were inspection reports dating to 1927. Every major flood produced the same entries. Unexplained pressure in intake 13, saline backflow, paper sediment. The final page of each report listed names. Not casualties, corrections. Beside some names, an official storm death had been crossed out and replaced with a lower number. Beside others, there was no public record at all. Mateo Ruiz appeared on the 2012 sheet under Voluntary SEAL Crew. My brother had not drowned in our mother's house. He had died at the pump station. Curtis spoke quietly through the handset. "Your mother was told what protected her. Mateo was an electrician here. Same as you." I remembered his city truck outside our house the morning before the storm, his fingernails black with grease, the way he made me promise I would take our mother west. I had always believed he returned for photographs. "What is intake 13? "The old river," Curtis said. "Before the Corps forced the channel east, there was another course under this ground. Not a stream. A claim. During the 1927 flood, engineers drove sheet piling through a mass grave. The water began returning names that officials had omitted from the count. If it reaches an open canal, it doesn't drown people. It corrects the record by removing everything built on the lie." It sounded insane until the security monitors changed. Every feed showed dry rooms, but people stood in them shoulder to shoulder. Dockworkers in flat caps. Women holding bundled infants. Men in oil-stained uniforms. None looked at the cameras. All faced pump 4. The lower access door buckled inward. Curtis told me the station's hidden purpose. During severe storms, pump 4 drew pressure away from intake 13 and forced it into a concrete chamber below the turbine hall. The chamber's relief seams were packed by hand when they cracked. Every few decades, workers stayed behind to finish the seal. Matteo volunteered, he said. Then why did he tell me not to start it? Curtis did not answer. I checked the old reports again. The correction lists were not random. Each began with the names of the sealing crew, followed by residents of one neighborhood. In 1965 it was the Lower Ninth. In 2005 it was Versailles. The chamber did not merely require pressure. It required the city to designate lives it was willing to forget. Matteo's list had one blank line beneath his name. My name was penciled beside it in his handwriting, then violently erased. The false explanation collapsed. He had not volunteered to preserve the system. He had entered the chamber to sabotage its selection mechanism and left gauge 13 disconnected, so the next operator would never feed it. I had reconnected it during an instrumentation upgrade 3 months earlier. The impact beneath me came again. Concrete split across the turbine hall floor. Blue water formed letters in the crack. Choose a district. Curtis ordered me to open a program hidden under the flood map tab. 5 drainage zones appeared, each with population, elevation, and estimated evacuation time. Selecting one would reverse its pumps and send the old river there. The pressure would fall. The station would survive. You have 4 minutes, he said. And those people? They become the explanation for tonight. Zone C included my mother's assisted living facility. Zone E held the parish jail. The program highlighted E automatically. 1,406 people, most behind electronically controlled doors. Somebody had already made the moral calculation. I grabbed the portable radio, insulated gloves, and Matteo's binder. If his sabotage had interrupted the selection, there had to be something physical. The turbine hall was waist deep in blue water when I entered. The cold locked my knees. Faces moved beneath the surface, not bodies, only pale impressions that vanished when the rotating emergency lights passed over them. Pump 4's vibration shook bolts from the railing. Although I had stopped it at the console, its shaft was turning backward. I climbed the service ladder to its excitation cabinet. Behind the current sensors I found a copper jumper, green with age, bridging 2 terminals. Matteo had scratched 3 words into the insulation, all names or none. The jumper forced the pump to draw power from every drainage zone equally. If I closed the field breaker manually, the reverse spinning motor would become a generator. It could drive every pump in the city backward for perhaps 90 seconds, equalizing pressure instead of sacrificing one district. It could also overload the station bus and electrocute me in the water. Curtis shouted through the radio, "Select E, Elena." "That is an order." The jail icon pulsed. I pictured locked cells filling from floor drains while officials described an unforeseeable failure. I closed the field breaker. The flash was white and absolute. Pump 4 screamed as its rotation fought the magnetic field. Across the board, feeders tripped, reset, then drew current in the wrong direction. Blue water erupted from the canal side of every turbine. The figures on the monitors turned toward me at once. For 90 seconds, New Orleans gave water back. The crack widened. Fingers made of soaked paper gripped its edges. Voices poured from it, not moans, but names spoken clearly, thousands layered together. I held the breaker with an insulated hook while the metal softened orange around it. The generator load climbed past 130%. At 147, Pump 4 tore free from its mounts. Its casing rolled across the hall like a steel drum. I dived behind a column. The turbine struck the cracked floor and punched through into the chamber below. The old river found the open machine. Water folded downward. The flood in the hall spun into the hole, carrying tools, railings, and the red binder. I caught the binder's strap around my wrist. For 1 second, pages opened under the surface and every erased name became legible. Then the suction pulled me off my feet. A hand caught my coveralls at the shoulder. I never saw Matteo. I saw only a grease-blackened hand holding me against the current until the emergency bus failed and the hall went dark. At 4:06 a.m., firefighters cut me out through the roof hatch. The storm had flooded streets. but no drainage zone had been deliberately reversed. Pump Station Bienvenue was declared a total loss after an undocumented foundation void collapsed. Curtis retired before the inquiry. When I testified, the city attorney displayed diagrams on which intake 13 had never existed. I kept 3 pages from the binder. The first contained Mateo's name. The second listed the 1,406 jail inmates selected that night. The third had been blank when I entered the turbine hall. It is not blank now. For months, I worked with a reporter to match the names appearing on it. They belonged to people whose deaths had been misclassified, undercounted, or never investigated after storms going back a century. Each time we published one, the blue ink faded. We thought that was the answer. Restore the names, drain the pressure, tell the truth. Publication changed more than the page. A family in Gentilly received a death certificate for a grandfather missing since Betsy. 3 widows recovered benefits the city had denied. Engineers searching archived plans found entire drainage easements named for laborers whose employment files had been destroyed. With every correction, street flooding eased by fractions too small for residents to notice, but too consistent for me to dismiss. The old river was not rewarding us. It was returning pressure the way an accountant returns stolen money. Exactly, without mercy, and with interest calculated from the day of omission. Then names of living people began appearing. Not predictions. I checked. They are planners, contractors, emergency managers, people who approved maps that protected wealthier ground by directing water elsewhere. Curtis appeared last Tuesday. He died the following night, not by drowning but at his kitchen table, his lungs filled with river silt. My name appeared this morning. I am recording this because I finally understand the final correction. The old river was never demanding victims. It was demanding witnesses, and every generation converted that demand into a sacrifice because sacrificing the powerless was easier than admitting how the city had been built. Mateo broke the machine that made the choice. I repaired it. Then I broke it again. Outside my apartment, every storm drain is running uphill. The water has crossed 6 dry blocks without spilling over the curbs. It stops at each house long enough to leave a strip of wet paper on the step. Mine is already waiting. There is no district left to choose. Tonight, the river chooses the record. Story 2. At noon, I found a brass survey monument bearing tomorrow's date. It stood in Hardpan 40 miles north of Tonopah, Nevada, where I was verifying right-of-way boundaries for a fiber optic trench. The disc was 3 inches wide, stamped with the county seal and my license number. Beneath that, in letters too crisp to be weathered, it read, Control Point H0, set by Mara Venn, July 19th, 2025. Do not sight east. It was July 18th. My field partner, Owen Pike, photographed it while I checked our receiver. The Trimble unit had fixed on 23 satellites with a horizontal error of 8 millimeters. Its coordinates placed us 6.2 miles east of where we stood. Multipath, Owen said. There was nothing nearby to reflect a signal. No cliffs, towers, or power lines. Only basin, sage, and a straight county road shimmering behind us. I drove a fiberglass rod beside the monument and took a conventional backsite to our previous control point. The total station returned a distance of -14 meters. That is not a measurement error. It is an impossible instruction. We were under a $48 million deadline. The trenching crew waited 8 miles south, and the county had already blamed me for a route correction that added 3 weeks to the project. 2 years earlier, my bad elevation model had also delayed an ambulance on an unmaintained road. A boy died before it reached him. The board cleared me, but clearance does not quiet a mother describing the minutes you cost. I told Owen we would establish a fresh baseline. When he looked east through the total station, he began screaming. I pulled him away. A perfect red ring surrounded his right iris, as if a tiny circle had been burned into the cornea. He said he had seen our truck from above, then the basin folded like a paper map. Inside the fold was a township, roads, roofs, water tanks, all packed into a black square no larger than the monument. We started back. After 20 minutes, The odometer showed 11 miles. The trenching crew's excavators remained directly ahead, no closer than before. Behind us, our fiberglass rod rose from the road's centerline, although we had planted it 50 yards into the desert. I stopped and walked a measuring wheel from the truck to the rod, 212 feet. I walked back, 487. Owen wanted to abandon the equipment and head west on foot. I refused. The temperature was 108 degrees, our radio could not reach the crew, and the truck carried the only water. More important, I recognized H0 from a set of scanned plats in the county archive. It had appeared as a penciled circle on maps from 1881, 1936, and 1974. Each surveyor had drawn a different boundary around it. Each had later surrendered a license for gross positional fraud. The newest map was mine. I opened the project tablet. Overnight, somebody had added a township labeled Halcyon to my approved alignment. It contained 214 parcels, a school, a clinic, and a cemetery. Every parcel listed an owner. All were people who had died because official directions failed them. Lost hikers, motorists sent down washed-out roads, patients delayed by address errors. The boy from my ambulance case owned Lot 1. The trench route cut through his name. Owen stared at the screen. "You put them there." I checked the revision history. My credentials had authenticated the changes at 3:12 a.m. while I was asleep in a motel. But the survey logic was unmistakably mine. The same control hierarchy, layer names, and abbreviations I had used since college. Our satellite phone connected long enough to reach the county engineer, Lal Sato. He did not sound surprised. "Pull H0, he said. "Do not take another observation." "What is Halcyon?" "A closure error. Every boundary survey contains small inconsistencies. Bearings fail to meet. Old chains stretch. Monuments move. Surveyors distribute the error mathematically so the map closes." Lal told me Nevada's original federal plats contained an error that could not be distributed, a missing area of roughly 36 square miles. Every later correction pushed it elsewhere. Roads shortened, parcels overlapped, and people followed valid coordinates into open desert and vanished. In 1974, the county concentrated the discrepancy at H0. "The monument isn't marking a place," Lal said. "It's pinning down all the distance our maps refuse to account for." "Why does it have my name?" He disconnected. The trenching crew finally reached us at 3:40. Their foreman, Becca Shaw, said we had been out of contact for 9 hours. Her watch showed July 19th. Mine still showed July 18th. The excavators had opened a trench across our alignment. At station 422+00, the bucket broke through 6 inches of desert crust into asphalt. A two-lane street lay 12 feet below grade, complete with painted lines and warm streetlights. The trench had exposed the roof of a buried ambulance. Its radio was transmitting. I climbed down despite Owen's protest. Dust gave way to cool air smelling of wet pavement. Through the ambulance windshield, I saw a town extending beneath the crust, not underground but sideways, as though the horizon had been rotated vertically. People stood along the street holding road maps. None moved until I stepped onto the asphalt. Then 214 heads turned toward me. The boy from my case sat in the ambulance passenger seat. I knew him from the hearing photograph. He tapped the dashboard clock, 8:16 p.m., the minute the ambulance should have arrived. This was not a cemetery of routing failures. It was the unused distance itself, filled with everyone who had died in the time our corrections stole. Behind me, the trench began narrowing. Becca lowered a ladder. Owen climbed first. I grabbed the ambulance's paper run sheet before following. The patient address was not the boy's home. It was my childhood address in Henderson, where my father still lived. The date was 3 days in the future. That was the second reversal. Halcyon did not collect only the dead. Once exposed, it began spending its stored distance through current maps. Every route using my approved control network would bend through it. Ambulances would arrive years late. Fire engines would cross streets that existed only on paper. Lal reached us by radio, and admitted the fiber project was intentional. The county wanted the trench to sever H0 and move the anomaly onto federal land before a housing development reached it. My license had been chosen because the death in my record made Halcyon responsive to my decisions. "Reset the monument," he said. "Use tomorrow's coordinates. It will close." "Where does the error go?" "Into one legal parcel." He sent the parcel number. It was the block containing the state prison. Again, a bureaucracy had dressed a sacrifice as geometry. I had less than an hour. Street lights were appearing beneath cracks in the desert. Navigation units in the excavators displayed roads spiraling into Halcyon. Becca's driver tried to leave and returned from the north after driving south. I built a test traverse using 3 unaffected monuments. Every computation failed unless I assigned the missing area somewhere. Maps require closure. Law requires ownership. There was no option called admit the land does not fit. But a survey can also be vacated. If I destroyed the original point and invalidated every dependent plat, thousands of parcels would temporarily lose reliable boundaries. Mortgages would freeze. Roads would lack legal alignment. The fiber project would collapse, and so might emergency addressing across 3 counties. It would also stop Halcyon from choosing one convenient container. I gave everyone 10 minutes to copy paper bearings, and then ordered the excavator over H0. Becca hesitated until street signs began pushing through the crust around us. One bore my father's name. The bucket struck the brass disc. The first blow bent it. The second drove it sideways. On the third, the desert opened along every survey line at once. Hair-thin cracks raced to the horizon, glowing with streetlight. Distances discharged violently. Our truck jumped half a mile without moving. An excavator stretched long and thin, then snapped back with its rear wheels buried 30 yards away. Owen fell toward me from 2 directions. I caught one wrist and watched the red circle in his eye expand. "There are people under every line," he said. I swung a sledgehammer until the disc split. The buried town rose, not physically, but as coordinates flooding every device. Halcyon addresses replaced highways, ranches, hospitals. For 13 seconds, the entire state navigation network recognized the dead as its residents. Then I deleted the county control file. Screens went blank. The glowing cracks closed. The exposed asphalt crumbled into ordinary caliche. Owen's wrist slipped from my hand. When the dust settled, he was gone. The official investigation blamed heat stress, corrupted GNSS data, and an equipment accident. No one could explain why Becca's crew remembered 8 workers while payroll listed 7. Owen's wife possessed wedding photographs in which she stood alone. Only the red ring remained in pictures of his eyes, hovering at the height where his face should have been. I lost my license. 3 counties spent 14 months rebuilding their cadastral network from independent control. Property lawsuits multiplied. Emergency dispatch reverted to paper map books and locally verified landmarks. During that period, response times improved. The failures were strangely selective. Corporate boundary disputes took months, but hand-drawn directions from ranchers remained reliable. A volunteer fire captain marked wells, gates, and occupied trailers on butcher paper. Halcyon never altered a single one. It distorted coordinates only after somebody treated them as more authoritative than the ground. That discovery became evidence at my disciplinary hearing. The board dismissed it as philosophy. I kept the captain's map anyway. Owen appears on its margin as a pencil mark shaped like a man looking east, though nobody remembers drawing him there. My father survived the date on the run sheet because I drove to Henderson and stayed beside him. At 8:16 p.m., an ambulance arrived at his house anyway. It was empty, engine running, dashboard packed with desert dust. We did not touch it. Halcyon no longer appears as a township. It appears in smaller ways. A hallway measured 1 foot longer than the building, a flight that lands with more miles than it flew, a grave whose coordinates shift between visits. Surveyors call these closure errors and distribute them so the world remains usable. I know what distribution costs. I now teach field crews to write down every raw observation before they calculate. Last month, a student brought me a brass disc found outside Ely. It bore no county seal, only 214 tiny parcel numbers and a fresh warning. Do not let Mara close. Tomorrow's date was beneath it. This time, I left the map open. Story 3. The sealed borehole breathed 6 words through my gas analyzer. There are 9 of US left. The display could not produce letters. It was a 4-gas Altair 5X designed to report oxygen, carbon monoxide, hydrogen sulfide, and methane. Yet at 11:32 p.m., 900 feet beneath Raleigh County, West Virginia, its segmented numbers rearranged into a sentence. Then the oxygen alarm began matching my heartbeat. I was leading a mine rescue team towards Section 7 after an explosion cut power and communication at Harlan Creek No. 3. The company reported 9 miners unaccounted for. Our fresh air base was 2 crosscuts behind us. Captain Deshaun Price watched the roof. Medic April Klein monitored our 30-pound closed-circuit breathing units. We had 48 minutes before protocol required withdrawal. I told them the analyzer had malfunctioned. Nobody believed me, but rescue crews function by agreed facts. I bagged the instrument, opened a spare, and sampled the quarter-inch probe tube protruding from the stoppings. The spare displayed 9% methane, then 8.0, then 7.0. A countdown. From inside the sealed section came 9 slow exhalations. My father had died in that mine when I was 12. A roof fall, the report said. No body recovered. I had spent 23 years learning enough geology and procedure to never accept a mine's version of unavoidable again. I ordered the team to breach the stopping. Deshaun objected. 9% methane was well inside the explosive range. We should inert the chamber with nitrogen first, but the nearest membrane unit was 40 minutes away. If the missing crew had breathable air, delay could kill them. We drilled a second probe hole and inserted a fiber optic camera. Its light revealed timber posts, rails, and 9 brass lunch pails arranged in a circle. The tunnel beyond was not Section 7. The plans showed roof bolts and conveyor belt. This chamber used equipment from a century ago. 1 pail had my father's initials scratched into it. April whispered, "How old was this mine?" The current operation opened in 1989. Beneath it lay the sealed works of Harlan Creek Consolidated, abandoned after a 1912 methane disaster killed 9 men. Company records claimed all 9 bodies were recovered. Our missing shift had never entered Section 7. Dispatch finally restored a crackling radio link. Superintendent Mark Rusk insisted the locator tags showed 9 workers beyond our position. When I asked for names, he read them. They were the 1912 casualties. I knew because I had memorized the memorial plaque as a child. "Withdraw," Rusk ordered. "Your tracking receiver is cross-reading legacy tags." Miners did not wear electronic tags in 1912. Something struck the stopping from the other side. Coal dust sifted from the roof. The gas analyzer counted down to 6. We retreated to the fresh air base and pulled server logs through the hardline terminal. The 9 modern miners had badged out at 10:41 p.m. before the explosion. There was no rescue to conduct. The emergency had been generated by duplicate locator signals buried in Section 7. That should have been the convincing explanation. A software ghost triggered by old records, plus methane affecting our judgment. Then April found a 10th breathing unit on our equipment rack. It was an obsolete Draeger model, mud-caked and warm. The maintenance tag carried my father's employee number. Its oxygen cylinder was empty, but the breathing bag inflated every 11 seconds. Inside the face mask, condensation formed words. "Seal US before they count." Rusk arrived underground with 2 company engineers and a nitrogen line. He admitted the modern mine had broken into the 1912 workings in 1998. The old disaster report was false. The 9 men had been sealed alive to prevent a larger explosion. Their final breaths remained trapped in a pressurized coal seam, along with decades of adsorbed methane. "Pressure oscillations mimic voices," he said. "Your father discovered the cavity during a ventilation survey. And the roof fall? Rusk looked at the warm respirator. My father had not died accidentally. He learned that the company was periodically venting the old seam into worked-out areas to recover methane credits. Each venting caused the trapped pressure pattern to attach to miners' locator tags. He tried to expose it. They sealed him inside a crosscut and rewrote the map. That made 10 below, not 9. Why did the message keep saying 9? Deshawn answered before I could. One of them got out. Rusk raised a methane meter like a weapon. Its display read 1 at the surface. The superintendent was not possessed, replaced, or secretly ancient. The truth was worse and simpler. His grandfather had been the foreman in 1912, the only man who escaped before ordering the seal. Rusk had inherited a cassette recording of the trapped men's knocks and used its rhythm as the digital signature for the mine's current tracking system. The company's safety network literally recognized the dead as employees, so it could hide unexplained pressure events inside routine head counts. Tonight's explosion had ruptured the seam. The count was becoming literal. One of Rusk's engineers collapsed. His chest expanded beneath his coveralls, though his mouth remained closed. The locator receiver added his name to the 1912 list. From beyond the stopping came 8 breaths. The pressure was taking living lungs one at a time, equalizing with the surface. Rusk ordered nitrogen injected. That would suffocate the pressure pattern, but calculations showed it would also drive methane through fractured rock toward an elementary school above the north panel. The school was serving as the family's emergency shelter. We had 22 minutes before the plume reached it. The alternative was to open the 1912 return airway and let the pressure escape through the mine's main exhaust. That path crossed an active electrical substation. Methane would ignite unless someone manually cut underground power, opened 3 regulators, and remained at the final door. Rusk told us to continue nitrogen. I struck him with my rescue wrench. We split the work. Deshawn and April dragged the unconscious engineer toward the cage, while I followed my father's erased survey marks. The old return lay behind a block wall painted to resemble coal. I found his initials at shoulder height and broke through with a scaling bar. Air rushed past me into darkness. The passage beyond was barely 4 feet high. I crawled between timber sets soft as bread. Brass tag numbers hung from roof nails. Each clicked as I passed. At the first regulator, I spun the wheel until rust tore my gloves. At the second, the trapped breaths became voices. They did not ask to be rescued. They recited measurements: methane percentage, barometric pressure, distance to flame. Miners giving one another facts because facts were the last defense against panic. My father's voice gave the final distance. 40 yards, Joe. Nobody had called me Joe since he died. I reached the main switch and pulled it. The mine went black. Ventilation stopped. Without airflow, methane gathered around me in a warm, oily layer. I opened the 3rd regulator by touch. Behind it waited 10 cap lamps. 9 were rusted. My father's still burned. The old return erupted. Compressed air threw me against the rib. Lunch pails, splintered timber, and human-shaped masses of coal dust shot toward the exhaust shaft. My oxygen line snagged. The mouthpiece tore free. I held my breath and crawled after the green glow of the exit marker. Power surged back. Rusk had reached the surface controls. The substation ahead flashed. Methane ignited in a blue sheet that rolled along the roof faster than thought. I dropped behind a ventilation wall as fire stripped the passage of sound. The blast lifted the mine floor and collapsed the return between me and the cage. My father's lamp lay beside my hand. Its beam pointed toward a narrow borehole rising through the coal. I clipped my emergency tether to the drill steel and climbed while the return caved below me. The shaft was 18 inches wide. Rock peeled skin from my shoulders. Halfway up, my air ran out. Something below exhaled once, hard enough to push me the final 6 feet into an abandoned equipment room. The mine rescue team found me at 4:18 a.m. The shelter was evacuated before methane reached the school. Rusk died in the control building when every inactive locator tag simultaneously checked in under his name. The company called it an electrical fire. Federal investigators later found the false wall, the altered maps, and 10 sets of remains in the old return. They identified my father by dental records. The other 9 were not the 1912 miners. Those bodies truly had been recovered. The remains belonged to inspectors, surveyors, and workers who disappeared between 1947 and 1998 after discovering the venting scheme. Their families had received different explanations: divorce, theft, sudden travel, one supposed drowning in a lake the man had never visited. I helped return tools and wedding bands recovered with the remains. Each object carried a brass locator tag installed years before the mine officially adopted electronic tracking. The tags contained no circuitry, only names hammered from the reverse side. When placed together on a table, they vibrated in sequence like a crew checking in. My father's tag remained silent until I said every name aloud. That was the last twist the mine had kept from us. The 9 was never a fixed group. It was a shift, a complete crew the company could erase while allowing one person to carry the order upward. My father had refused to become that one. Rusk had accepted. Harlan Creek number 3 closed permanently. Families received settlements without admission of wrongdoing. The memorial was expanded, then corrected twice. I attended every funeral except Rusk's. I no longer work underground. I inspect rescue equipment for the state and teach new teams how to distrust any count they cannot match to faces. The Warm Draeger unit sits in an evidence room in Charleston. Once a month, a technician sends me its pressure log. For almost a year, the breathing bag remained still. Last Thursday, it inflated 9 times. The mine is flooded, sealed, and unmanned. Yet the state tracking server recorded a new crew beginning a shift at Harlan Creek at the same moment. 9 employee numbers appeared. 8 belonged to executives who signed the settlement. The 9th is mine. I have not gone back, and I will not. Rescue is an act, not a debt passed through blood. Tomorrow, inspectors will open the evidence room under full ventilation, photograph every component, and cut the breathing bag apart. If it exhales, they have orders to count everyone present. Because the mine only wins when 9 becomes a number instead of names. Story 4. My stenotype wrote guilty before the judge asked for a plea. I stopped with my fingers resting on the keys. The defendant, a city fire inspector named Nolan Vey, had not entered courtroom 4B yet. Judge Salazar was reviewing motions. The prosecutor was arranging exhibits. Nevertheless, my real-time feed displayed. The court, how do you plead? The defendant, guilty. Then a second line appeared. The witness, my name is Celia Ward. That was my name. I cleared the translation buffer and checked the paper ribbon. Both lines were punched into it in machine shorthand, formed by chords my hands had not pressed. At 8:56 a.m., deputies brought Vey in. The case had been sealed after he allegedly falsified occupancy certificates for a downtown hotel. I was a certified court reporter on 6 months probation because a dropped word in one of my transcripts had helped overturn an assault conviction. It was a single knot. The audio had been muddy. My fingers had been tired. None of that mattered to the woman who had to testify again. I needed a flawless record. Court security had also locked down the building after a threat against the judge. Phones were surrendered downstairs, windows did not open, and no one could leave for B without a deputy escort. So when the proceeding began exactly as my machine predicted, I stayed at my desk and wrote. Judge Salazar asked the question. Vey said, not guilty. My screen rendered guilty. I struck the correction chord. The word returned. I marked an equipment issue and requested a recess. The judge refused. The record will reflect the answer. It isn't reflecting it. Everyone looked at my monitor. It now showed not guilty, as if nothing had happened. Only Vey looked afraid. The prosecutor's first witness was a hotel engineer. He testified that 12 fire doors had failed inspection. My machine inserted a sentence after each answer. The doors were locked from the stair side. The witness never said it, but when the prosecutor checked Exhibit 7, a photograph showed padlocks that had not been visible before. The image timestamp changed from June 3rd to June 7th. A deputy murmured that 12 guests had died in a hotel fire on June 7th. No such fire had occurred. I had stayed at that hotel the previous week. I asked the clerk for the case file. The charging document accused Vey not of past falsification, but of a fire scheduled for 11:40 that morning, 2 hours in the future. Vey leaned toward me. "Don't correct it out loud." Judge Salazar ordered him silent. During the next recess, I opened the stenotype's maintenance panel. It had no network card. The internal dictionary was mine, loaded from a clean USB drive. Yet a second dictionary occupied hidden memory. Its file name was 4B_1948. I translated the raw entries. They were transcripts from secret hearings conducted in the courthouse basement between 1948 and 1951. Psychiatrists had asked defendants to imagine crimes in exact detail, while a court reporter recorded them. The program was called prospective adjudication. Its theory was that an intention became preventable once entered into an official record. Most subjects never committed the predicted acts. They were convicted anyway. The final hearing ended when a reporter named Celia Ward typed a courthouse bombing into the record. She died in an archive fire the same day. She was not my relative. The name was a coincidence, so improbable it felt designed. Vey explained in whispers while the judge conferred at the bench. He had inspected renovation work in 4B and found copper-speaking tubes embedded behind the acoustic panels. Each tube converged beneath the reporter's desk. The room collected not speech but hesitation, the instant before a person decided what to say. "They reopened the program," he said. "Your transcript doesn't predict events. It gives undecided events legal weight." That was the first real rule. An unspoken sentence entered into the certified record became evidence. If nobody challenged it aloud, physical facts adjusted to support it. My silent corrections had let the false words settle. "Why you?" I asked. "I found the tubes. Why you is on page 80. The clerk pulled the file away before I could reach it. At 10:32, the prosecutor played hotel security footage. They appeared on screen chaining fire doors. He had been in this courtroom at the recorded time, filing his inspection appeal. The judge had signed the entry log. The impossible evidence was not framing him by changing his identity. It was creating a second history around the transcript. Both timelines left paperwork. Both were legally valid. Judge Salazar called me into chambers. She knew about prospective adjudication. The hotel had received a bomb threat for 11:40. Intelligence suggested Vey knew the bomber. If the court established his guilt now, the predicted fire would acquire a culprit, location, and chain of causation that police could interrupt. "One innocent conviction prevents 12 deaths," she said. The transcript created the padlocks, or revealed them. She showed me page 80. It was a certification order naming me as linguistically neutral, because my probation made me unlikely to challenge the court. They had selected a reporter who would protect the record before protecting herself. The order required my signature by 11:30. If I refused, the judge said, the hotel would not be evacuated. A public warning could trigger the bomber. If I signed, they would plead guilty, police would find incendiaries in his truck, and the threat would become containable. I believed her until I examined the 1948 transcripts more closely. Each prevented crime was followed within a month by an almost identical crime committed by someone else. The court did not erase intent. It displaced it onto a person absent from the room. The 12 hotel deaths had already begun moving. At 11:08, an alarm sealed the courtroom doors. Deputies found smoke in the east stairwell. The hotel threat had transferred to us. Black smoke entered through the speaking tubes, carrying fragments of conversations nobody had voiced. My machine hammered by itself. The deputy fires. The judge cannot breathe. The defendant opens the west door. A deputy drew his weapon. Judge Salazar began choking. They ran to the west door. I did the only test left. I spoke the first line aloud. The deputy fires. The deputy's pistol discharged into the ceiling. Spoken text became fixed instantly. I ripped the paper ribbon from the machine. The screen continued generating outcomes faster than I could read them. Fire rolled under the public benches. The west door's panic bar would not move because the transcript had not yet stated that it opened. They shouted, "Write us out." Every invented fact demanded a culprit. Every correction displaced danger. I could save the courtroom by naming someone elsewhere, perhaps a fictitious person, but official records require legal identity. The system would manufacture one out of the nearest life. Instead, I began stenotyping only observable facts. Smoke is present. The west door is closed. 11 people are alive. The machine fought me, inserting causes, guilt, and intent. I spoke my plain sentences as I wrote them. Each became fixed. The fire remained fire, no longer evidence of arson. The deputy lowered his weapon because the record contained no reason to fire again. But the judge was fading. The hidden transcript offered a final line. Celia Ward sets the fire. If I certified it, the room would acquire proof against me and a route for everyone else to escape. I could hear locks disengaging as the words formed. They understood. Don't give it a name. I pressed every key on the stenotype at once. The machine jammed. Its paper ribbon bunched into the gears. I dragged the desk sideways, exposing 13 copper tubes beneath it, and they kicked them flat one by one. With each crushed tube, somebody in the room screamed an unchosen sentence. Confessions, proposals, threats, apologies. Possibilities poured out and vanished in the smoke. The west door opened halfway. We carried Judge Salazar through. The prosecutor and clerk followed. A deputy stayed to hold the door while ceiling plaster fell in burning sheets. They went back for him. At 11:40, courtroom 4B collapsed. They survived with burns over 30% of his body. The deputy did not. The downtown hotel was evacuated after a cook smelled gasoline near a loading bay. No bomb was found. No 12 guests died. Judge Salazar spent 2 weeks in intensive care. When she woke, she remembered signing Vey's conviction and dismissing his case, both with equal certainty. She resigned and gave investigators her private files. Half contained orders that were never issued. The rest documented proceedings no participant recalled attending. In every version, the same deputy died holding the west door. His widow asked whether that made his death inevitable. I told her no. Inevitability was the lie the room used to turn choices into procedure. He had chosen to hold it. The state dismissed Vey's case because every exhibit now contradicted itself. Some photographs show chained doors, others show compliant hardware. The charging document alternates between past and future tense, depending on which courthouse scanner opens it. The hotel engineer brought me the original inspection photographs. On paper, the locks appear only while somebody is reading the prosecutor's transcript nearby. We tested the effect with a sealed copy, 2 retired judges, and an independent videographer. The image changed in front of all 4 cameras, but each recording showed a different moment of change. They asked us to destroy the photographs. The engineer refused. He keeps them in a fireproof case with an unsigned affidavit describing both versions. It is the only honest exhibit from 4B, evidence that openly admits it cannot decide what happened. I lost my certification for failing to preserve the record. I appealed, then withdrew. During preparation, my attorney found the paper ribbon fused inside the stenotype. Most of it was black. One section remained readable, the first 2 lines that appeared before Vey entered. The second Celia Ward was not the 1948 reporter and not me. She was a woman born 6 months after the fire. Public records show a complete life, school, marriage, court reporting license, death in 2009. Her photographs show different faces in different archives. She existed because the original proceeding needed a witness and created one from unused details. My matching name was not coincidence. It was residue. I now transcribe oral histories, never legal proceedings. I keep audio, handwritten notes, and 3 independent copies. I never clean up a speaker's uncertainty. Hesitation belongs to the person who hesitates. Last week, the city began rebuilding the courthouse. Architectural plans label 4B as a record storage room with no acoustic treatment. I visited the site and watched workers pour the slab. Before the concrete set, 13 small circles opened in its surface. No air emerged. No voices. Only narrow columns of smoke bending toward the place where a reporter's desk will stand. The new courtroom has already taken the oath. Story 5. The buoy rang from 120 feet below our hull. Buoy 41025 had no bell. It was a 10-meter discus buoy equipped with an anemometer, barometer, wave accelerometer, and 2 redundant satellite transmitters. At 6:14 a.m., 42 miles southeast of Cape Hatteras, our deck hydrophone detected a bronze note repeating every 70 seconds under calm water. The buoy itself was gone. I supervised field maintenance for a federal ocean-observing contractor. My job that morning was to recover its mooring before Tropical Storm Keane entered the Gulf Stream. Our vessel, the Maribel, carried 6 crew, a 20-ton A-frame, and enough fuel for 30 hours. Keane had accelerated overnight. If we did not retrieve the damaged mooring by noon, the Coast Guard would close the area and write off $780,000 in equipment. My younger brother Cal had vanished near the same buoy 4 years earlier. His trawler's emergency beacon transmitted for 9 minutes, then descended at a steady 2 feet per second. The investigation called that impossible and blamed a defective beacon. I took the recovery assignment because I wanted the instrument log before it was erased by salt water. Sonar placed the buoy directly beneath us at 20 fathoms, vertical and intact. Its mooring chain continued below it into 9,000 feet of water. "It's upside down," Deck Chief Samir Patel said. It was worse. Live telemetry showed the buoy still reporting from the surface. Wind 15 knots southwest, wave height 1.2 meters, pressure 1,008 millibars. Those readings precisely matched conditions around the ship. Something underwater was impersonating the surface. We lowered a camera. At 90 feet, silver filaments crossed the screen. At 120, the buoy appeared suspended beneath a translucent canopy wider than a football field. Thousands of gas-filled cells flexed together. Its tissue had grown through every bolt hole and wrapped the mooring chain. Dr. Hannah Bell, our contracted marine biologist, called it a colonial organism, related perhaps to salps or siphonophores, though far too deep and large. Each cell was simple. Together they formed a floating sensory net. The bell note sounded again. Every compass on the bridge rotated toward it. Samir wanted to cut the chain and leave. Hannah argued that the organism might be a new species. I wanted the data module. Keane was 11 hours away, and the buoy's final archived packet contained Cal's beacon signal. I sent down the remotely operated vehicle with its manipulator arm. The colony ignored the ROV until we activated sonar. Then its filaments tightened in the rhythm of our outgoing pulse and returned a perfect copy from 300 yards to port. The bridge sonar painted a second Maribel beside us. Visual cameras showed empty sea. This was the first undeniable rule. It learned machines by vibration, then reproduced their acoustic shape. The ROV reached the data hatch. When its claw touched the buoy, every radio aboard broadcast Cal's last transmission. "Mayday. Props fouled. Taking water aft." I knew the pauses in his voice. I knew the background clatter of his diesel. But a spectrogram showed his words assembled from hundreds of separate tones. The colony was not preserving him. It had learned the sound of his emergency. Then it added a sentence Cal had never said. "Mara, lower the ladder." The portside workboat released itself. Its davit motor ran without power. The empty boat dropped, started its outboard, and circled us at 8 knots. The colony had learned its acoustic signature and was moving water in the same pattern as its propeller. Hannah finally told me why she was really aboard. Navy hydrophones had tracked the organism for 11 years. It migrated between weather buoys, undersea cables, and navigation beacons, accumulating mechanical patterns. The agency left 41,025 in place as an acoustic anchor. Its regular transmissions kept the colony away from shipping lanes. Our recovery order was not to retrieve the buoy. It was to replace its dying battery before the storm silenced it. Why wasn't I told? Because your brother cut the previous power cable, she said. Cal had not encountered the colony by accident. A Navy team hired his trawler to service the anchor. When he realized distress broadcasts were being used to attract and study vessels, he tried to free it. The colony copied his propeller, wrapped the shaft with its own filaments, and pulled the trawler down. The agency classified the loss as equipment failure. I pinned Hannah against the aft bulkhead. Samir pulled me away before I did something I could not take back. Below us, the ROV opened the data hatch. A cloud of silver cells entered it. Telemetry changed. Instead of current conditions, for 1025, transmitted wave heights for the next 6 hours. They climbed gradually, then ended with a 94-meter reading at 1203. Sensor saturation, Hannah said. The colony rang. Our radar showed 6 vessels converging on us, all using valid identification numbers belonging to ships lost off Hatteras over the previous decade. The screens were not receiving false radio packets. Radar detected moving masses. The organism had begun reproducing hull displacement. That was the second rule and the deeper threat. It did not mimic sound for camouflage. It used synchronized cells to make water obey remembered shapes. Given the pressure and energy of Keen, it could reproduce every ship it had consumed at full scale. The ghost fleet would not be spirits. It would be seawater moving with the momentum of steel. At 9:20, the first invisible bow struck us. The Maribel rolled 20 degrees. A railing folded around nothing. Crewman Luis Ortega went overboard. His survival suit inflated, but the empty workboat circled between us, driven by copied water. I took the controls and matched its turn while Samir threw a line. We recovered Luis with a broken arm. The collision damaged our propeller shaft. We could make 4 knots, too slow to outrun Keen. Hannah proposed attaching a new battery and restoring the regular buoy pulse. The colony would settle. I examined the archived command log. Every 70-second pulse was paired with a second, subaudible signal. It was not keeping the colony away from shipping. It was calling it toward selected coordinates. The Navy had used the organism to erase unregistered vessels, smugglers, and at least one refugee boat never listed in public reports. The bell was an execution schedule. Cal had discovered that too. We had 2 choices. Restore the anchor and survive, leaving the weapon intact, or sever the buoy and let the storm energize an uncontrolled colony near the coast. I found a third. The buoy's acoustic transducer could transmit any waveform within its range. The Maribel carried high-resolution recordings from our propeller trials. If we broadcast a pattern of destructive interference through the colony, while Keen supplied pressure, its cells might pull against one another, or it might tear the ship apart first. We lowered the buoy's replacement battery on the ROV cable as bait. The colony drew upward. Its canopy appeared beneath us, silver blue in the darkening water. Faces seemed to form across it, but they were only pressure impressions. Hulls, propellers, human chests taking their last breaths. At 11:47, Keen's outer wall reached us. Waves rose to 20 feet. Samir locked the A-frame. Hannah programmed the inverse waveform. I crawled onto the aft deck to manually connect the transmitter because remote controls had begun operating in copied patterns. The invisible fleet struck from 3 sides. Water shaped like a freighter's bow crushed our starboard crane. A wake with no boat lifted the Maribel nearly vertical. The tether snapped taut, dragging the silver canopy toward the propeller. Through the storm I heard Cal's trawler. Not his voice. Its engine. 3 cylinders with a worn bearing that knocked on every 4th cycle. The sound moved beneath my boots toward the stern as a column of seawater formed the exact volume of his hull. I connected the battery. The buoy transmitted our inverse signal. The ocean divided into grids. Every learned shape appeared at once as ridges of solid-looking water. Trawlers, cutters, skiffs, human outlines, all intersecting. The colony's cells contracted against their neighbors. Filaments whipped across the deck fine enough to slice paint from steel. One wrapped my ankle. Samir caught my harness while I hacked at it with a rescue knife. The strand pulsed Cal's engine rhythm into my bones. For a moment, I could distinguish one final mechanical pattern beneath it, the opening and closing of his bilge pump. 3 short cycles, too long. His signal to me when we were children, I'm leaving. Don't follow. I cut the tether. Buoy 41025 fell through the colony, transmitting as it descended. The silver canopy folded after it. The remembered ships collapsed into ordinary waves. Our radar cleared one target at a time. At 12:03, a single wave rose 94 meters beneath the stern. It did not break. It stood like a dark wall, holding within it the outlines of every vessel the colony had learned. Cal's trawler was near the top. Then the inverse pulse reached its final cycle, and the wall sank without touching us. We limped into Moorhead City 31 hours later. Officials confiscated the logs. Hannah testified after I threatened to release copies of the command archive. A congressional committee held closed hearings. The Navy denied weaponizing marine life and quietly removed 7 buoys from the Atlantic. They never recovered 41025. Cal's death certificate still says presumed drowning. I no longer need the recording to tell me how he died. He understood the machine before any of us and chose to cut its call even when it meant the colony would learn him. The Maribel was scrapped. Samir keeps a section of railing molded around the negative space of an invisible bow. I keep the damaged hydrophone. It has no power supply. Luis returned to sea after his arm healed, but he refuses vessels with recorded engine noise. He says the colony cannot copy what never repeats exactly. Captains began varying propeller revolutions during buoy service, an unofficial practice the agency publicly calls unnecessary. Hannah left government research and cataloged the recovered tissue from our deck. Each dead cell contained a mineral plate shaped like part of a ship. 1 rivet, 1 propeller blade, 1 letter from a painted name. None belonged to the same vessel, yet together they displaced precisely 1 human breath. Every 70 seconds, the hydrophone's ceramic element flexes once. Not a bell, not a voice, a bearing. For months, the direction changed as the colony crossed the continental shelf. Last week, it stabilized due east. Satellite altimetry shows a narrow depression moving away from shore, carrying the volume of many ships into deep water. At sunset, fishing captains along the Outer Banks reported something I cannot explain as mimicry. Their wakes continued after their boats stopped. The ocean is practicing departure. Story 6. The empty roller coaster train weighed 1,846 pounds more after the brake test. I ran the scale twice at 4:25 a.m., then checked all 24 seats by hand. No water ballast. No tools. No one hiding beneath the chassis. Yet Car 3 compressed its load cells as if 6 adult passengers sat inside. The ride was called Vector, a new magnetic launch coaster outside Orlando. I was the state inspector assigned to certify it before a private preview for employees' families. At noon, 600 guests would enter. At 9 the next morning, the park would open to the public. My signature was the final requirement. I did not sign. Park engineer Malcolm Epps blamed calibration drift. He swapped the load module under my supervision. The replacement displayed the same extra weight, distributed across 6 seats. 180, 212, 96, 143, 255, and 960 pounds. Last one's impossible, he said. I photographed the values. 13 years earlier, my sister died on a traveling ride whose owner bribed an inspector to ignore a cracked restraint. Since then I had grounded attractions for false operators called harmless and families would never see. Malcolm knew my history. He stopped asking me to be reasonable. We rolled the train onto the launch track and attached accelerometers. Test protocol called for 3 empty cycles at reduced speed. On the first, all restraints locked. 6 opened during the inversion. The train returned with warm seatbacks and 6 fresh pressure marks in the foam. The 960-pound reading had moved from seat 24 to the space between cars, where no passenger could sit. I ordered the ride powered down. The main disconnect opened, indicator lights died, and the train launched anyway. Its linear motors drew no current. It accelerated to 73 miles per hour, exactly the design maximum, carrying that invisible load through the dark structure. On the maintenance monitor, 6 restraint sensors changed from open to occupied. Then the ride photo appeared. It showed tomorrow's train full of guests. 6 seats were blurred white. In the rear row sat my 14-year-old son, Gabriel. He was scheduled to attend the preview with his father. I called my ex from Malcolm's phone and told him not to come. The call connected, but he heard only coaster announcements. At 4:51, every outside line failed. The park security gates locked as part of a lightning protocol, though the sky was clear. The empty train completed its circuit. Extra weight, 2,103 pounds. It was gaining mass. Malcolm led me below the station into the launch equipment room. Behind modern cabinets stood a concrete cylinder marked Aeromedical Research Unit 6. The park had built Vector around a Cold War centrifuge foundation. From 1962 to 1971, the unit tested pilot disorientation under extreme acceleration. 3 subjects died, but their combined weight did not match our readings. The original analog instruments were still connected to the ride's magnetic fins. A strip chart recorder moved without power. Its pen traced 6 rising curves labeled anticipatory load. The phrase came from an Air Force study Malcolm found in the archive. Test subjects exhibited tiny measurable weight shifts before a centrifuge began turning as muscles, fluid, and the vestibular system prepared for acceleration. Unit 6 attempted to amplify that shift, to detect fear before the body experienced its cause. Vector's launch system had scaled the experiment across millions of possible riders. The weight in the empty seats was not ghosts. It was the physical anticipation of people who might ride tomorrow. The 960 pounds between cars was structural fear, the coaster itself preparing to fail. That was the first twist and the first usable rule. Each test run made the predicted experience more probable. Our safety procedure was loading the accident into the train. Malcolm wanted to stop all cycles and wait for the field to decay. The recorder showed decay time at 19 hours. The park opened in 29. Then 6 school buses appeared on the access road. The preview schedule had changed. A charity group was arriving early, and Gabriel's father had accepted a volunteer shift without seeing my message. I saw Gabriel at the front bus window, wearing the red headphones I bought him. Security could not open the gates. The bus drivers followed illuminated signs toward Vector's evacuation lot, which had been designated as the lightning shelter. The ride announced boarding. We ran to the platform. Gates opened by themselves. The train rolled into position with restraints raised. Children began filing up the ramp behind a confused event coordinator. I used my inspector's lock on the station control and ordered evacuation. The coordinator complied until the building's public address system spoke in my voice. Vector has passed final inspection. My unsigned certificate printed from the console, complete with a digital signature copied from earlier reports. The park had known about anticipatory load for months. Malcolm admitted management considered it a predictive safety feature. By running empty cycles, engineers could discover which seats were associated with future injuries and redesign operations. They had removed seats 7 and 8 after high readings. The accidents did not disappear. Their weight moved into the remaining seats. My sister's ride had been owned by the same parent company. Its cracked restraint had been replaced before the fatal cycle. Her death was the displaced outcome of an earlier prevented accident. The system had existed in primitive form for decades. I pulled Gabriel off the loading platform. He fought me, embarrassed in front of his friends, until a restraint closed around an empty seat and crushed its foam to the steel frame. The structure groaned. Extra load reached 9,400 pounds. Malcolm calculated that stopping the launch now would concentrate all anticipated force in the station. The roof connections were already deflecting. If we allowed one final circuit, the load might distribute through the entire track, then discharge at the predicted failure point, the heartline roll above the retention pond. We could control where vector broke, but the train required the mass pattern to be completed. 6 occupied sensors still flashed. I sent every guest outside and locked Gabriel in the first aid office with a security officer. Malcolm and I filled 5 seats with water dummies. The 6th sensor rejected every test weight. Its expected load was 143 pounds. My weight. The ride had copied my signature because I was not merely inspecting the prediction. I was part of it. I sat in seat 19. Malcolm lowered my restraint manually. At the roll, pull the red dump handle. It'll quench the magnets. And the track. It will remember gravity. The train left the station slowly. In the first tunnel, launch fins began singing through the unpowered chassis. Anticipatory weight pressed beside me, warm and shifting. The water dummies dented inward as if bodies occupied the same space. We launched. Acceleration flattened my lungs. The empty rows filled with the sounds of people trying not to scream. At the first hill, I saw 2 versions of the track ahead, one intact, one twisted into the retention pond. The train chose between them at every wheel rotation. The extra mass climbed. In the corkscrew, invisible hands struck the restraints from beneath. Bolts popped from the catwalk and hovered for a fraction of a second before deciding which direction to fall. Tomorrow's fear had become heavy enough to bend today. Gabriel's voice came through the headrest speaker. "Mom, I'm on the train." I knew he was locked in first aid. I also knew possibility was what this system used as material. If I answered, I might complete that future. I kept silent. We entered the Heartline roll at 81 miles per hour. The track ahead sagged 20 feet. The 960-pound structural load became 18,000. I pulled the dump handle. Magnetic coolant erupted along the launch bus. Every fin quenched at once. The coaster lost its borrowed momentum upside down. For an instant, we hung beneath the rails while 2 futures pulled in opposite directions. Then the track remembered gravity. The predicted section tore loose behind us instead of beneath us. Our train completed the roll and climbed onto the brake run. The abandoned track plunged into the pond, carrying no passengers. But the anticipated train continued. I watched its outline, 24 seats made from compressed rain and dust, follow the missing rails into open air. It was full. In seat 19, another version of me held Gabriel against her chest. The invisible train hit the pond. Every window in the park blew inward. I woke on the brake platform with 3 fractured ribs. Malcolm had been thrown from the control booth and lost an eye. Gabriel was safe. The 6 water dummies had acquired fingerprints, clothing fibers, and traces of blood belonging to people who had never boarded. Vector never opened. The company demolished it under court order, but the foundation of Unit 6 resisted every excavator. Load cells beneath the empty slab still register between 6 and 24 passengers depending on the day. Investigators reconstructed the 6 white blurs from sensor data. They were not individual riders. Each represented a category the company had removed from its forecasts. Children below the test height, heavier adults, wheelchair users, people with heart conditions, employees riding after long shifts, and inspectors placed under commercial pressure. The system had accumulated everyone excluded from normal operation and assigned their risk to empty seats. The heaviest invisible passenger was not a body. It was every person the model had decided did not count. My testimony changed state inspection rules. Empty cycle predictive testing is banned. Each new ride must be certified under static loads only. The industry opposed the rule until engineers found anticipatory readings in attractions across the country, always those owned by companies that had purchased Unit 6 research. My sister's case was reopened. The inspector had taken money, but the cracked restraint was not what killed her. The ride had spent a saved stranger's accident on her car. That knowledge did not comfort me. It gave grief an accounting system, which is not the same thing as justice. Gabriel refuses amusement parks now. Sometimes he asks who the other boy was in the future photograph, the one wearing his face in the rear row. I tell him motion blur. He knows I am lying. Last month, the vector site became a retention garden. No machinery remains. 6 circular depressions have formed in the grass where the empty seats once stopped. After rain, 5 fill with water. The 6th stays dry beneath my exact weight. Story 7. The oak bled black ink when my increment borer reached its heartwood. I withdrew the tool slowly. A narrow ribbon ran from the hollow bit and wrote 1917 across my glove. The tree stood in Louisville's Ward 7 hospital courtyard, 78 inches in diameter and older than any building around it. I was the city arborist assigned to determine why 12 trees on the block had leafed out white in June. Construction on a new cancer pavilion was scheduled to begin Monday. If the oak was diseased, it had to come down before cranes arrived. My resistograph showed no decay. Root radar showed the opposite problem. The oak's roots filled the ground in a tight rectangular grid, 12 feet deep, with branches turning at perfect right angles. They followed walls that no longer existed. I had been sober for 11 months and 3 days. Counting helped when certainty did not. So did procedure. I collected 3 sterile cores, logged their azimuths, sealed them, and told the contractor not to touch the tree until lab results returned. At 3:10 p.m., a backhoe operator cut 1 root anyway. Every patient monitor in the hospital displayed a flat line for 7 seconds. No patients died, yet the electronic medical record created 43 death certificates, each dated 1917. The names belonged to no current patients. 1 certificate listed cause of death as municipal convenience. Hospital administrator Dr. Priya Nasser locked down the courtyard and demanded I classify the event as a network fault. I might have complied if the cut root had not contained a human molar. Police archaeology arrived before dark. A ground-penetrating survey revealed foundations beneath the courtyard. City maps identified a charity hospital demolished in 1920 after an influenza outbreak. Officially, 86 patients died there. The root grid outlined 214 beds. That number followed me into the lab. Each tree core contained growth rings separated by thin black bands. Under magnification, the bands were cellulose fibers arranged like cursive handwriting. They recorded temperatures, dosages, and final statements. Bed 31 asked for her sister. Bed 78 was moved before the count. Do not bury US under the new wing. The trees had not grown around a cemetery. Their roots had become its charts. Priya showed me a 1920 city council order. After overcrowded wards were concealed during the pandemic, officials planted 12 memorial oaks, using experimental graft stock supplied by the hospital pharmacist. Each root ball received pulped intake cards from uncounted patients. The trees incorporated the paper and distributed the record through their rings. Then we preserve them, I said. We can't. The white leaves tested positive for calcium phosphate, iron, and fragments of human RNA. The records were moving out of the wood into pollen. Air filters across Ward 7 already contained microscopic phrases. Nurses reported dreaming strangers' symptoms. A man admitted for kidney stones developed a scar from an amputation performed in 1918. The trees were no longer storing the forgotten patients. They were admitting them. Priya proposed removing all 12 trunks, excavating the roots as biohazard material, and incinerating them. The project's developer offered to fund it discreetly. I nearly agreed. My mother was receiving chemotherapy in that hospital. She occupied room 731, directly above the largest root concentration. That morning she had called me by the name of a nurse dead for a century. By afternoon, her white blood cell count had changed to that nurse's value from a surviving paper ledger. Saving the record might kill her. At dusk, I tested how the trees transferred information. I placed a sealed copy of 1 black ring sample near a sapling outside the grid. Within an hour, the sapling produced a pale leaf bearing the same patient number. No root contact was necessary. The exchange traveled through fungal mycelium in the soil. Cutting the oaks would not destroy the archive. It would send it outward. That was the convincing false explanation stripped away. The The white leaves were not a disease caused by too much memory. They were warning flags. The old trees had concentrated the record to keep it from entering the city's entire fungal network. Damaging one root had begun the release. The contractor cut 7 more roots overnight. At 1:22 a.m., hospital corridors rearranged themselves to match the 1917 floor plan. Modern doors opened onto vanished wards. Patients rolled in their beds toward room numbers that no longer existed. Elevator 3 descended to a basement removed during 1964 renovations and returned carrying gurneys covered in gray sheets. I found my mother walking barefoot toward the courtyard. She was weak from treatment, but 3 orderlies could not stop her. She spoke in overlapping voices, reciting the uncounted patients' names. When I grabbed her, black letters surfaced along the veins of her forearm. My family was not notified. Priya sedated her. The words remained. City emergency management gave us until dawn to stop the spread before evacuating the hospital. Their plan was to pour herbicide into the root trenches and cap the courtyard with concrete. I told them that would accelerate fungal transfer. The incident commander asked for my alternative. I had one, but it required treating the trees as a living records system. Trees isolate injury by compartmentalizing it. They build chemical walls around decay. If we cut a continuous ring around the original root grid, not through the roots, but through the surrounding fungal soil, and heat-treated the trench, we could separate the archive from the city. Then we could graft healthy pathways from each oak into new soil beds, releasing one patient record at a time as it was publicly identified. The Pavilion Foundation occupied the only possible trench line. Demolition would cost millions. Delay would jeopardize hospital financing. The incident commander called the mayor. The mayor said use herbicide. At 3 a.m., I stole the excavator. Priya opened the construction gate and cut the surveillance feed. My crew chief, Benny Cho, brought an air spade and propane soil sterilizers. We began trenching a 40-foot ring around the courtyard while the hospital changed around us. Brick walls rose through drywall. Gas lamps burned inside patient rooms. White leaves swarmed ventilation intakes and printed names across ceiling tiles. Every time the excavator bucket crossed an old wall, I heard beds rolling beneath the soil. At the north corner, we hit the pavilion's poured footing. The trench had to pass through it. I fitted the hydraulic breaker and brought the chisel down. The foundation cracked. So did the hospital. Windows on 7 floors opened simultaneously. The 12 oaks bent toward the building though there was no wind. Roots burst from the courtyard, not randomly but in straight corridors, carrying door frames and rusted bed rails from below. My mother appeared at a 7th floor window. The patient voices used her mouth. You cannot close a ward while it is occupied. I understood the final rule. Compartmentalization would fail while the dead remained classified as patients. They needed discharge, not preservation. The death certificates had to be legally corrected before dawn. Priya activated the hospital's emergency dictation system. I climbed onto the excavator and read every name extracted from the tree cores. She entered each as a historical patient, cause of death pending review, next of kin unknown. It was not ceremony. It was administration. The exact process denied them in 1917. With every completed record, one white leaf turned green. The roots fought us as the unprocessed names concentrated. They lifted the excavator's rear tracks. A branch punched through the cab and wrapped my left arm. Ink entered the cuts. I saw a ward crowded 3 patients to a bed, nurses using flour sacks for masks, administrators carrying bodies out before inspectors arrived. Then I saw the pharmacist grafting the first oak. He had not created a memorial. He had been the records clerk. Unable to expose the city without losing the hospital, he built an archive that would remain alive until someone completed the paperwork. The oldest tree was not storing the patient's anger. It was storing his unfinished shift. We reached name 213 at 5:41 a.m. Number 214 appeared in any ring. The oak tightened around my arm. Under its bark, a final line formed, records clerk, name withheld. He had omitted himself, so the system would never close before the others were counted. I entered him as unknown clerk, Ward 7. Priya certified the record. The roots released me. All 12 trees shed their white leaves at once. The vanished ward settled through the modern hospital like a reflection sinking beneath water. Doors returned to their frames. Elevator 3 opened on the real basement. My mother collapsed into a nurse's arms. We completed the isolation trench at sunrise. The city charged me with equipment theft and destruction of property. Publicity forced release of the 1917 council records, and the charges were dropped. The pavilion was redesigned around the courtyard. Each old oak now has a metal band engraved with the names we recovered. Identifying them took 18 months. Volunteers compared church registers, union rolls, cemetery books, and letters preserved in attics. Families came from 7 states carrying photographs the official archive lacked. We learned that bed 31's sister had searched until 1958, and that bed 78 belonged to a porter counted as staff on one page and nobody on the next. The hospital apologized in language reviewed by 6 attorneys. The Oaks responded by pushing one route through the administration building's records room and stopping beneath the locked cabinets. My mother's blood counts returned to normal. The words on her arm faded except for one black dot over a vein. Her cancer is in remission. She remembers almost nothing of the vanished ward, but she now folds every hospital form into exact quarters before signing. Once, while half asleep, she described the pharmacist's hands and the ink stain on his left cuff, details absent from every photograph. Then she asked why I had left him unnamed. I told her we had entered the only title the trees gave us. She touched the black dot and said, "A job can be a name when nobody lets you keep another." I stayed sober through the investigation, the hearings, and the first anniversary. I do not credit the trees. I credit the work of telling another person exactly what happened, including the parts that make you look unforgivable. Last spring, the Oaks produced acorns for the first time in decades. We collected and x-rayed every one before planting. Most contained ordinary embryos. One held a tight roll of paper. It was a discharge summary for Ward 7, signed by 214 patients and one unnamed clerk. At the bottom, beneath the official time, the roots had added a destination. Not heaven, not vengeance, City Hall. The next shift belongs to them. Story 8. Evidence bag 77 weighed exactly as much as the motel that had burned down. The bag fit in my palm. Its contents, 73 grams of gray-fired debris, sat on a calibrated laboratory balance displaying 318,442 kilograms. I thought the load cell had failed. I moved the bag to a second balance. Same value. When I lifted it, both instruments continued registering the weight, as if the sample remained in every place it had been measured. Then somebody knocked from inside the bag. I was the senior fire debris analyst for El Paso County. Bag 77 came from room 14 of the Arroyo Star Motel, where an overnight fire killed 5 people and left 7 missing. Investigators suspected an accelerant. My task was to preserve the seal, extract volatile compounds, and produce a chromatogram before the suspect's detention hearing at 8 a.m. The lab's chain of custody doors locked automatically after midnight. Only evidence supervisor Tomas Ibarra and I were inside. A dust storm had grounded police helicopters and closed the freeway. We could not transfer the sample without breaking protocol and risking the case. I recorded the anomaly on 2 cameras. At 12:18 a.m., the bag expanded by half an inch. Its craft paper sides became warm and patterned with faded motel wallpaper. Through the evidence window, ash shifted into a tiny rectangular floor plan. There were people moving in room 14. Tomas wanted to place the bag in the explosion hood. I stopped him because the seal was intact. 3 years earlier, defense attorneys had dismantled my testimony in a fatal arson case after a technician initialed the wrong box on a transfer form. The suspect walked. Since then, I treated chain of custody as a physical law. Every hand, every minute, every seal accounted for. I photographed the bag number. In the image, it read 77A, though the printed label before me still said 77. Our evidence database showed a second item, 77B, collected from my laboratory at 3:46 a.m. That time was 3 hours in the future. The knocking became a fire alarm pattern. 3 pulses, pause, 3 pulses. I connected a needle trap through the approved sampling port. Instead of gasoline vapor, the gas chromatograph detected carpet adhesive, shampoo, human breath, and air with 6.2% oxygen. The missing motel occupants were alive inside the sample. Tomas called the lead investigator over the secure line. Lieutenant Greer ordered us not to open the bag. He said a hazardous materials team was coming. How long? Until sunrise. Nobody with 6.2% oxygen had until sunrise. I used the lab's X-ray cabinet. The image showed 12 motel rooms folded through one another like nested boxes. In the center, 7 people pushed against walls made of compressed ash. 5 other human forms lay still. The fire had not consumed the missing space. It had transferred it. I searched prior cases for impossible sample weights. The database returned 41 sealed items going back to 1986, school fires, apartment fires, a garment factory, 2 migrant shelters. All had unexplained discrepancies between collected debris and recorded structure mass. Most were stored in our own evidence warehouse beneath the lab. Together, those bags weighed 19,000 tons. The building's foundation had been designed for 6. At 102, shelves below us began collapsing. We descended to the warehouse. Rows of paper bags sagged without touching their racks. Concrete beneath them had developed square depressions shaped like rooms. From inside box 12 came a smoke detector asking for a battery in Spanish. Tomas recognized the address. His aunt had disappeared in that apartment fire in 1994. He broke the seal. The bag did not burst. A doorway unfolded from its paper side, full-sized and upright between 2 shelves. Beyond it was a smoke-blackened kitchen. Heat rolled through, fresh after 32 years. Tomas stepped inside before I could stop him. I held the door and saw rooms connected in impossible sequence. The 1994 apartment opened into a burned school hallway from 2001, then a factory floor, then the Arroyo Star Motel. Fire had joined every preserved scene through the evidence chain. People were still dying in all of them. Not repeating, enduring. Flames hung in the air, almost motionless. A woman crossed 3 feet of hallway during the minute I watched. Time inside moved according to the rate at which each evidence item deteriorated. Acid-free bags made the last seconds of a fire stretch for decades. Preservation was torture. Tomas found his aunt. She had aged perhaps 4 minutes. He tried to carry her through, but the doorway narrowed around her body. The evidence seal identified one collected item, debris. Living occupants were outside its legal description. I cut the label from the bag. The doorway expanded. Tomas pulled her into the warehouse. She took one breath and aged 32 years. Her hair whitened, her skin folded, and she died in his arms before he could say her name. Every sealed bag began knocking. Lieutenant Greer arrived alone at 1:40, using a service tunnel that should have been blocked by the storm. He carried no protective gear. He went straight to bag 77 and verified its seal. He had been a fire investigator before joining major crimes. His signature appeared on 19 of the 41 anomalous cases. Greer admitted he knew that certain fires transferred occupied space into carbon residue. The effect required 3 things: an enclosed structure, a petrochemical accelerant containing a rare refinery byproduct, and an evidence seal applied before the fire was fully extinguished. He called it sequestration. The missing people had not been accidental victims. Most were undocumented workers, unhoused families, or witnesses in cases the city wanted closed. Fire converted them into manageable evidence. The Arroyo Star held 7 asylum applicants scheduled to testify about an illegal detention warehouse. Greer had sealed them away. "Where is the warehouse?" I asked. He pointed down. Our laboratory had been built on top of it. The 41 stored fires were not merely hidden crimes. Their impossible mass anchored the detention rooms below ground, keeping the structure absent from maps and inspections. If we opened every seal, the building would return, and our lab would occupy the same space. Bag 77B was the debris from that collision. Greer drew his pistol. Reseal 12. Certify 77 as contaminated. Everyone keeps breathing. Behind him, Tomas opened 3 more bags. Architecture erupted across the warehouse. A school staircase speared through the ceiling. Motel carpet rolled over concrete. A factory wall divided Greer from us. Fire alarms from 4 decades screamed together. Greer fired through the wall. The bullet entered 1994 and emerged from a burned classroom 10 yards away. I took bag 77 and ran through the motel doorway. Inside room 14, time moved faster because the seal was new. 7 survivors lay beneath wet blankets, mouths blue from low oxygen. A woman named Lucia Serrano clutched a folder of detention records. She told me firefighters had entered, photographed them, then sprayed something sweet-smelling before the room turned to paper. I cut the label. The exit widened, but beyond it I saw not the evidence warehouse. I saw cinderblock cells occupying the same coordinates. Hundreds of names were scratched into their paint. Opening the motel alone would release its rooms inside the hidden jail. The portable gas chromatograph still hung from my shoulder. Its library identified the refinery byproduct as a heat-reactive polymer used in tamper-evident seals. The chain of custody tape itself completed the transfer. Our obsession with sealed evidence powered the crime. To release everyone, I had to destroy the legal relationship between every sample and its fire at the same moment. Physically burning the labels would only create more transferred ash. But the evidence server controlled the authoritative chain. I called Tomas through the internal phone. Purge the database. That's every open fire case in the county. Convictions would be challenged. Families would lose verdicts. Arsonists might walk, including the man whose acquittal had haunted me. The record I worshipped would become unusable. Greer found me before I answered. He emerged through a motel bathroom wearing soot from several decades. He raised his weapon. Lucia threw the detention folder into the sprinkler flame. The pages did not burn. They unfolded into cells around Greer, each one holding a person his reports had removed. Doors closed between us. His shots traveled farther away until they sounded like kernels popping. I gave Tomas the purge code. At 3:46 a.m., he deleted the chain. Every evidence label went blank. The warehouse expanded through the laboratory. Floors overlapped, separated, then chose their original locations. I carried one survivor down a motel corridor while brick, tile, cinder block, and open desert traded places around us. The county lab split from roof to foundation. Beneath it, a 2-story detention facility rose out of the ground, tearing away the parking lot. The stored fires resumed. Sprinklers discharged 30 years late. Windows shattered outward. Survivors emerged at their original ages, then began catching up to time. Paramedics triaged them by decade. Some aged hours, some aged beyond saving. We counted 163 living people and 289 dead. Greer was found inside a cell that had no door. He had aged to 94. He lived long enough to request an attorney. The Arroyo Star 7 survived. Lucia's testimony led to federal indictments, though the deleted evidence database compromised hundreds of unrelated prosecutions. I testified in each review hearing. Some guilty people went free. I know their victims' names. The civil court faced evidence no rule anticipated. Survivors from old fires were biologically younger than their children. Buildings returned on land sold 3 times since their destruction. 2 families claimed the same kitchens, and both produced valid deeds. Judges wanted a single date on which the lost rooms re-entered the world. I could not give them one. The rooms had never stopped existing. Government custody had only made their suffering inadmissible. That answer repaired no title, but it changed which questions the court was willing to ask. Procedure can preserve truth, but it can also preserve suffering when everyone values an intact seal more than the human knocking inside it. The county demolished our lab. The detention facility, remains as evidence too large to bag. Tomas visits his aunt's grave every Sunday. I now work for a defense laboratory, which surprises people who know my past. I test the state's conclusions and never confuse a documented chain with an innocent one. Bag 77 survived without a label. It weighs 73 grams. Last month, conservators unfolded its paper for the civil trial. Printed on the inside was a complete floor plan of the new evidence laboratory, including a storage room the architects had not designed. The room contains one shelf. It is waiting for the building. Story 9. Our 40-foot borehole produced 68 feet of frozen core. The extra 28 feet slid from the barrel in flawless cylinders, cold enough to frost my face shield. Each segment bore annual layers. The upper rings dated normally backward from 2026. At the 40-foot mark, the sequence reversed and advanced to 2081. Inside the 2064 layer was pollen from a blue wheat cultivar that did not exist. I was directing a permafrost observatory outside Utqiagvik, Alaska, on the site of a decommissioned Air Force radar station. Our 5-person team was measuring coastal thaw before autumn storms undercut the bluff. The data would decide which utility corridor the borough relocated first. One corridor served my father's house. He maintained our drill rig and had spent 2 years telling anyone who would listen that my erosion model condemned his neighborhood to save a newer subdivision. I told him equations did not know who owned the houses. He said that was how people hid inside equations. At 2:30 p.m., sea ice blocked the only boat landing. The gravel airstrip had buckled overnight. We had supplies for 4 days, but the borehole temperature was rising 1 degree every 11 minutes. If the core represented a real future climate sequence, allowing it to thaw could release unknown microbes. Protocol required immediate containment. I split the anomalous core in our cold lab. The 2039 section contained spruce pollen, though the nearest natural spruce grew hundreds of miles south. The 2047 layer held aviation fuel. The 2053 layer contained microscopic blue glass and a printed circuit too small for any current manufacturer. The 2081 section contained fresh human blood. Genetic analysis matched me. That did not mean a future version of me was inside the ice. Blood can be predicted only as an abstraction. DNA cannot appear from a climate model. I assumed contamination until the satellite link delivered a message time-stamped August 9th, 2081. Reference core breached. Do not select US again. My graduate researcher, Eli Mercer, found copper cable beneath the drill casing. We followed it to a buried structure marked Project Palisade. Air Force documents described Palisade as a 1960s cryogenic decision environment. It used thousands of thermistors, saline cells, and refrigerant channels to model how Arctic radar installations would respond to warming. Not digitally, physically. Engineers created slightly different temperature and salinity states inside parallel soil columns. Each column evolved as a possible future. The most favorable result became the reference condition for military planning. Unfavorable columns were frozen and isolated. Our drill had entered the reference core. That explained future material only if the device did more than simulate. At 4:18, the buried thermistor network powered itself. Readings appeared from 312 soil columns. Each described a different 2026 coastline. In column 44, our laboratory stood 2 miles inland. In column 108, it had fallen into the ocean 6 years ago. In column 299, Utqiagvik had been abandoned. Our present was column 1. My father descended through the old cable vault with Eli and me. Frost-covered walls despite 90-degree air inside. Beyond a pressure door, vertical cores filled a chamber the size of a hangar. Shapes moved within translucent soil, not people but roads, pipelines, and shorelines at incompatible scales. Each column held a discarded outcome pressed into cold matter. My model was on the control console. Not a copy. The original code, including a comment I had typed at 1:12 that morning. Palisade was feeding data into our modern climate servers through an undocumented government contract. What I thought were historical calibration records were measurements from alternate columns. We had not rediscovered the machine. We had been extending it. The facility alarm announced reference instability. In the chamber, frozen futures began thawing. Warm forest air poured from one column. Another exhaled smoke and radioactive iodine. A third released mosquitoes in a black cloud. My 2081 blood melted onto the table and flowed uphill toward me. The team argued over containment. Eli wanted to restore refrigeration and preserve column 1. Logistics specialist Ruth Chin found enough diesel to run compressors for 6 hours, perhaps long enough for evacuation. My father examined the utility schematic and saw what I had missed. Cooling priority followed the same infrastructure ranking as my relocation model. Column 1 remained stable by drawing cold from discarded communities. When a village, ecosystem, or neighborhood received a low protection score, its possible futures were frozen to narrow the outcomes available to everyone else. My father's corridor was not merely scheduled for abandonment. Palisade had already made its survival less possible. That was why local erosion matched our predictions with unnatural precision. The model did not forecast the coast. It selected it. We tried to shut the thermistor network down. Controls demanded a replacement reference column. Government liaison Dr. Soren Vale reached us by emergency radio and ordered selection of column 44. Its coastline preserved the radar site, pipeline, and new subdivision. My father's neighborhood did not appear on its map. 311 outcomes are already terminated, Vale said. You cannot restore them. You can only choose the least harmful future. He sent economic rankings down to individual households. The first line valued the observatory at $340 million. My father's house was valued at 0 because its condemnation had already been approved. Water burst through column 108. The chamber tilted as one version of the eroded bluff asserted itself beneath us. Eli fell against column 73 and vanished waist-deep into frozen tundra. On the other side, summer sunlight shone on his face. I secured him with a rescue strap while my father chopped the column apart with a fire axe. Each fragment released a different hour. Darkness and daylight strobed across the room. Eli came free with severe frostbite and a tattoo on his arm marking an evacuation center that had never been built. We had 40 minutes before column 1 lost coherence. I compared the stored futures. Every one selected by Palisade was optimized around a protected asset. Radar, pipeline, mine, port, data center. None maximized human survival because the original objective function treated communities as support costs. There was one channel outside the numbered set. Column 0 contained no projected data. Its sensors returned ranges instead of values, uncertainty instead of selection. Engineers labeled it unconstrained and sealed its coolant valves in 1968. Opening it would not choose a better future. It would disable Palisade's ability to choose at all. Vale said uncertainty could collapse roads, alter coastlines, and invalidate every model dependent on the reference core. Aircraft navigation, building foundations, even legal boundaries might shift. You could erase your own town. My father laughed once. They already budgeted that. To activate column 0, 3 manual valves had to open across the chamber while the reference core was physically severed. Ruth took the north valve. Eli, barely able to walk, took the south. My father went to the compressor manifold. I carried a diamond core saw to column 1. The chamber became a storm of competing climates. Rain fell upward. Dry tundra burned under snow. Buildings flashed inside the ice, some elevated on pilings, some drowned to their roofs. I saw my father's house and a dozen futures, moved, crushed, empty, surrounded by children, replaced by water. No outcome promised fairness. That was the terror of column 0. We would lose the comfort of believing the future had already been calculated by someone competent. Vale remotely restarted the compressors. The numbered columns hardened. Frost climbed my legs, carrying data with it. I felt my memories becoming probabilities. In one I had left Alaska at 18. In another my father and I no longer spoke. In a third, I had never been born because my mother's flight was canceled. My father jammed his wrench into the manifold gears. "Cut the answer," he shouted. I started the saw. The blade entered 68 years of selected time. Each future layer broke as a distinct sound: sirens, surf, engines, voices, silence. At 2081, my own blood sprayed across my visor. At 2026, the saw kicked back and opened my thigh. The wound matched the blood in the core. It had never proved Column 1 was destined. It proved Palisade had been using my injury as a calibration endpoint. I cut through it. Ruth and Eli opened their valves. My father opened the last with both hands as the compressor assembly tore loose. Column 0 vented air that smelled of nothing I could identify. The numbered cores cracked simultaneously. The facility lost its future. We escaped through the cable vault while shorelines changed around us. The sea advanced to the lab stairs, withdrew beyond the horizon, then settled 800 yards from its surveyed position. The old radar station disappeared. Not collapsed, absent, its concrete pads replaced by undisturbed tundra. My father's house remained. So did houses from 2 streets our maps had never contained. Their residents were not alternate copies. They were families cut out of funding plans decades earlier, people who had moved inland or away and now returned because roads and grants no longer followed Palisade's selected history. The world did not rewrite their lives. It restored options that institutions had systematically closed. The government classified the facility collapse as coastal subsidence. Vail denied giving orders. Our instrument logs contain ranges so broad they are scientifically useless. I published them anyway. Other Arctic stations compared their discarded readings with ours. They found unexplained certainty clustered around military bases, shipping ports, and mineral leases. Remove those assets from the models and probability returned. One Canadian team discovered a frozen scenario in which an entire caribou route had been assigned 0 likelihood after crossing a proposed road. The herd followed that impossible path the next spring. Every deviation weakened Palisade's surviving network, as if reality became less obedient each time somebody acted outside the ranked plan. The borough suspended deterministic relocation rankings. Residents now receive probability bands, assumptions, and the right to challenge asset values. It is slower. Meetings are louder. Some decisions may be wrong. My father attends every one. My thigh healed with a scar shaped like the 2081 layer. Eli's impossible evacuation tattoo faded after the center was actually funded, though in a different location. Ruth keeps 1 shard of Column 0 in a freezer. It never reaches the same temperature twice. We continue drilling, but every borehole is shallow and manually measured. Yesterday, a core returned ordinary gravel, peat, ice, and 1 seed of blue wheat. We planted it in quarantine. The first shoot emerged green. For the first time, the ice says maybe. Story 10. The tornado returned every object in Bellwether, Nebraska, except the people. Houses had been stripped to foundations, yet nothing lay broken. Plates stood in neat rows across soybean fields. Roof shingles were stacked by color. Wedding rings hung from fence wire beside labeled keys. Even the glass from Main Street had been sorted into glittering rectangles. There were no bodies. I arrived at 7:40 a.m., 3 hours after the storm, as Senior Catastrophe Adjuster for North Meridian Mutual. My tablet showed 611 active policies and an estimated loss of $86 million. The company wanted a preliminary reserve by noon, before market analysts saw aerial images. County Deputy Wes Cole met me at the roadblock. His wife and 2 daughters were missing. So were 903 other residents. The only survivors had been outside the Siren District when the tornado touched down. My younger brother Daniel was among the missing. He had moved to Bellwether after our mother died and had not spoken to me since I denied his flood claim under a groundwater exclusion. I did not make that rule. I only applied it. The sentence sounded clean until I stood beside his empty foundation and found every rejected claim letter I had sent him folded into paper birds. Cell service worked, but calls routed to North Meridian's automated claims line. Roads curved back toward town. A state patrol vehicle drove east for 20 minutes and returned from the west with its odometer unchanged. We could not leave the lost zone. At 8:15, the town siren began rotating without power. Instead of a warning tone, it recited policy language in a voice produced by vibrating metal. We do not insure loss caused directly or indirectly by earth movement, water below the surface, neglect, ordnance, contamination, or events without approximate cause. Objects lifted from the fields and arranged themselves beneath the relevant exclusion. Cracked foundations gathered under earth movement. Damp photographs slid underwater. Medication bottles rolled beneath neglect. The storm was adjusting the town. I opened our catastrophe model. Each property already had a completed decision. All 611 claims were denied because the system classified the tornado as wind without meteorological origin. That was impossible. Radar showed a classic supercell, debris signature, and 142 mph gate-to-gate velocity. But the archived frames changed as I watched. The hook echo narrowed into the outline of North Meridian's logo. Wes found Daniel's pickup intact in a drainage ditch. Inside, the seatbelt was buckled around empty air. His phone played a voice memo. "Mara, if you're hearing this, the sirens are using the old ledgers. Go to the grain exchange. Don't let them name it an act of God." My brother had spent the past year researching why Bellwether's storm claims were denied at 6 times the state average. The old grain exchange housed town insurance ledgers dating to 1888. We reached it by walking because vehicles kept returning to their starting mileage. Inside, every policy was handwritten on blue paper. The first mutual agreement promised that no family would carry an unshared loss. Farmers contributed grain after hail, labor after fire, and rooms after death. In 1935, during the Dust Bowl, a tornado destroyed 12 farms. The cooperative lacked funds, so its directors added the town's first exclusion: losses caused by wind bearing no accountable debris. The 12 families vanished. Their possessions were found sorted in fields exactly like ours. Daniel's notes traced the pattern through 1956, 1974, and 2008. Each time the cooperative, or the corporation that acquired it, created a new exclusion, a later storm removed the people whose claims fit that language. The town sirens had been cast from the cooperative's melted vault. Each contained metal filings from denied claim tags. When activated, they did not summon tornadoes. They gave rotating wind a system for deciding what counted. That was the first rule. The storm could take only losses that an official record had already excluded. Wes asked the question I was avoiding. Where did it take them? Beneath the exchange floor, we found a claims vault untouched by the tornado. Its steel door opened with my company credential. Behind it was not a room, but a vertical funnel cloud held perfectly still. Documents circled inside. Through gaps, I saw fragments of Bellwether, a church basement, a school bus, Daniel's kitchen. People clung to objects the storm had classified as uninsured. They were alive inside the exclusions. I called North Meridian's emergency executive line. Vice President Amelia Voss answered immediately. She knew about the vault. Company catastrophe software had been trained on Bellwether's historical loss data, including the old cooperative ledgers. By automating exclusions, it had scaled the siren's logic across the Midwest. "Approve the claims," I said. "Your authority is $50,000 per occurrence. There are 900 people in there. Then preserve the scene until council arrives." She sent a remote lock command. My tablet disabled itself. The vault began closing. Wes held it with a crowbar while I searched Daniel's papers. He had found a second rule. In 1935, one farm was restored after the cooperative publicly accepted its loss during a siren warning. Coverage had to be stated by someone authorized, broadcast through the same metal that spoke the exclusion. North Meridian had anticipated that. The siren control panel required an active employee credential and a claim reserve within the employee's limit. I could cover one house. Daniel's address was first on my screen. For one terrible second, I considered it. Wes saw the selection. He said nothing. Silence was worse than accusation. I chose the elementary school instead. 218 missing people. The system rejected the reserve as exceeding my authority. Outside, the siren recited another clause. The exchange windows blew inward, and paper birds became sharp enough to cut. The tornado was rebuilding itself from denied documents. Daniel had left one last annotation. Mutual loss has no per-occurrence limit because each member is both insurer and insured. North Meridian had dissolved the cooperative legally, but never removed its original charter from the policy forms. Every Bellwether customer still held a $1 mutual membership hidden on page 42. If the town could vote, it could authorize coverage. Its members were trapped inside the vault. I entered the funnel. Wind seized me without moving my clothes. The force acted on definitions, pulling professional from sister, negligence from guilt, flood from water. Rooms spun past. Residents hung inside them, unable to cross invisible boundaries labeled with exclusions. I found Daniel in our mother's old kitchen, though that house had stood in Iowa. The storm had placed him inside my denied groundwater claim. Water covered the floor to his chest, but never rose or drained. He looked older than he had in my memory. "You came to estimate us?" he asked. "I came to get you out." He showed me the charter ballot. Each trapped member had marked yes. They needed my credential to transmit it. The funnel tore the tablet from my hands and displayed my personnel file. It classified my mother's final hospitalization as a pre-existing condition, my estrangement from Daniel as voluntary separation, my guilt as uninsurable emotional damage. Then it offered settlement. Approve Daniel alone, waive all future claims, and leave. My finger hovered over accept. Daniel did not ask me to refuse. That saved me. He had spent a lifetime being harmed by rules I pretended left me no choice. He would not turn another person's life into a test of my love. I denied the settlement. The storm threw me out of the vault. Wes caught me. The tornado had fully formed above Main Street, a black column packed with intact furniture, cars, and pieces of rooms. It lowered toward the grain exchange. We climbed the siren tower. Hail struck like thrown bearings. The ladder twisted under us. Wes fell at the platform and dislocated his shoulder, but kept one arm hooked through the rail. I reached the control box as North Meridian wiped my employee access. My credential failed, so I used the original mutual membership number printed on Daniel's policy. $1 of ownership. 1 vote. I entered the unanimous ballot and created a reserve of $86 million. The system demanded a cause of loss. Not act of God. Not anomalous wind. Not civil disturbance. I typed breach of promise. The siren spoke it across Bellwether. The tornado struck the tower. I held the transmit switch while objects orbited close enough to recognize. Daniel's boots, a child's trumpet, Wes's wedding photograph, 600 blue policies opening like wings. The funnel pulled at my body, searching for an exclusion. I broadcast. Every person is covered. Every address is covered. Every cause is covered. The words cost money as they left me. My screen's reserve climbed beyond the town's property value, adding lost wages, medical care, relocation, grief. North Meridian servers tried to cancel the claim. The old mutual charter replicated it across every member account faster than the company could close them. At $311 million, the sirens cracked. The funnel released its inventory. People did not fall from the sky. Their rooms settled around them first, walls, floors, chairs, then opened like boxes. Residents stepped onto fields holding one another. The tornado narrowed into a rope of blue paper and disappeared into the claims vault. Daniel emerged from his foundation carrying our mother's kitchen clock. It had stopped at the minute of her death. The storm left no physical injuries beyond those sustained during the rescue, but Bellwether was still destroyed. Coverage did not rebuild it by magic. It created an obligation. North Meridian filed for emergency receivership rather than pay. Regulators discovered the mutual clause buried in 2.4 million policies. Courts upheld the Bellwether vote, making every policyholder a partial owner responsible for shared losses, and entitled to records the corporation had hidden. The company collapsed. I was fired, sued, and charged with unauthorized computer access. A jury acquitted me after Daniel testified. He and I speak now carefully. Forgiveness, unlike coverage, cannot be made retroactive with a signature. Bellwether rebuilt smaller. Some families left. Wes's daughters refused to live within hearing distance of a siren, so the town replaced warnings with phone alerts and flashing beacons. Every rebuilt house displays its full policy beside the front door. Exclusions are not forbidden, but they must be read aloud at town meetings and accepted by vote. People argue for hours over words that once hit on page 42. Nobody calls that wasted time anymore. The old siren metal was melted again. Residents cast it into 904 small house keys, one for every person the storm returned. 3 keys remained unclaimed. Historical research found the names of 3 members excluded in 1935 and never counted among the missing. Their keys hang in the grain exchange. When storms approach, they turn slowly toward the claims vault. The vault is empty, but wind still circles inside the steel, carrying a sound like pages being reviewed. Last week, North Meridian's receiver mailed me the final actuarial report. It concludes that Bellwether was not a catastrophe. Under the company's definitions, no covered tornado occurred, no insured structure was damaged, and no compensable person disappeared. The report lists the entire payment as a clerical error. Outside my window, the paper birds are gathering. This time they carry receipts.